Welcome back to the channel, my great viewers. Let's go to today's fascinating deep dive into the world of rare American coins, where something as small and ordinary as a 1-cent coin can hold a story worth millions. Imagine holding a 1981 Lincoln penny in your hand, a coin that millions of people have seen, spent, and forgotten. Yet, somewhere among all those ordinary pennies lies one so extraordinary, so rare, that it has been valued at an unbelievable $19,000 million. That's right, a simple 1-cent Liberty 1981 Lincoln penny that could change everything you thought you knew about pocket change. Stay tuned, because in this video we're going to explore the mystery, the history, and the incredible possibilities that make this coin one of the most talked about rarities in U.S. coinage history. The story of the 1981 Liberty Lincoln penny begins like any other coin in American circulation. It was struck during a transitional period when the United States Mint was preparing for one of the most significant changes in the composition of its coinage. Until 1982, pennies were still being made primarily of copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc. But because copper prices were rising, the mint soon switched to a cheaper copper-plated zinc composition. The 1981 penny, therefore, stands as one of the last full copper Lincoln cents ever produced for general circulation, marking the end of an era that had begun in 1909. At first glance, a 1981 Lincoln penny doesn't appear to be special. It carries the same obverse design showing Abraham Lincoln's profile, with the word Liberty to the left and the date 1981 to the right. The reverse features the Lincoln Memorial, the iconic image introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Yet, despite this familiar appearance, subtle differences and rare minting errors have turned a handful of these coins into treasures worth unimaginable sums. Now, when we talk about value, especially in the realm of rare coins, what truly makes a coin priceless is not simply its age, but its uniqueness. And in the case of the 1981 Liberty Lincoln penny, uniqueness comes from minting errors, composition anomalies, and mint mark variations that slip through the cracks during production. Every coin tells a story, and the errors in this particular penny have written one that collectors and historians will never forget. Let's begin by understanding why a 1981 Lincoln penny that's one minted in Denver could command such astronomical value. Coins from the Denver Mint bear the D mint mark just below the date, indicating where they were produced. Most of these coins were perfectly ordinary, but a few have been discovered with striking errors, such as double die obverse, off-center strikes, broad strikes, and even transitional metal errors, coins that might have been accidentally struck on planchets meant for earlier or later years. One of the most intriguing possibilities is the existence of a 1981 Lincoln penny struck on a pre-1982 copper planchet of higher purity, or even on a leftover foreign coin planchet. Such an error would drastically alter its weight and metallic composition, making it stand out immediately to any skilled collector. Some examples weigh slightly heavier than the normal 3.11 grams expected for a copper penny, a telltale sign of an extraordinary mistake. Then there are the double die errors, where the design on the coin's surface appears to have been imprinted twice, slightly misaligned. On a 1981 penny, this can result in the word Liberty, the date, or even Lincoln's facial features appearing doubled. The effect is visible to the naked eye and can make the coin instantly recognizable. Collectors pay fortunes for such specimens, especially if the doubling is clear and the coin remains in mint condition. But perhaps the most fascinating error found in some 1981 pennies involves the mint mark itself. Normally, the D is carefully punched into the die used to strike the coin, but in some cases, this was done by hand, leading to variations in size, shape, and even placement. Occasionally, the mint mark was punched twice or at a slight angle, producing what's known as a repunched mint mark RPM. These small differences might seem insignificant, but to a collector, They represent historical fingerprints, evidence of human error in an era of machine precision. Now imagine a 1981 D Lincoln penny that combines multiple anomalies: a copper composition different from the standard, a double die on the obverse, a repunched mint mark, and perhaps a slightly off-center strike. Such a coin would not only be exceedingly rare but would represent a perfect storm of minting mistakes, the kind of discovery that would drive experts and collectors into a frenzy. And indeed, coins like this have sold at astonishing prices, as rarity and condition multiply their worth exponentially. Let's not forget the role of condition and grading. A coin's value is not just about its errors but also about how well it has survived the passage of time. Grading agencies like PCGS and NGC use meticulous scales to rate coins from poor to mint state. A flawless, high-grade 1981 D penny with clear visible errors could be worth millions, and in the case of this extraordinary coin we're discussing, an estimated $19,000 million, a value that reflects not just its rarity but the intense demand among elite collectors worldwide. So, how could a 1-cent coin reach such an unimaginable figure? Let's consider the psychology and economics of coin collecting. Rare coins are more than metal discs, they are physical pieces of history, each representing a story that no other coin can tell. Wealthy collectors and investors often view such pieces as tangible assets, comparable to fine art or rare gemstones. The price they are willing to pay is not tied to the coin's face value but to its uniqueness, its backstory, and its desirability in the numismatic community. The 1981 Liberty Lincoln penny holds a special place in American culture because it represents the last chapter of an all-copper era. The Lincoln cent had already become an American icon, a symbol of everyday life and hard work. Yet, as time moved forward, changes in production methods, materials, and minting technology made coins like the 1981 D increasingly nostalgic and historically significant. Collectors often see this coin as the bridge between the classic and modern eras of U.S. coinage. Among numismatists, there's always the thrilling possibility that a coin found in everyday circulation might be worth a fortune. Stories abound of people discovering rare pennies in old jars, drawers, or pocket change. A 1981 D Lincoln penny with a rare error could easily have gone unnoticed for decades, passed from hand to hand in grocery stores and gas stations, until one day, an observant collector realized what they had. The discovery of such a coin always reignites excitement in the coin community, reminding everyone that hidden treasures still exist. To understand why this particular coin is so extraordinary, we need to look deeper into how minting errors occur. During the coin production process, dies are created with intricate designs that press the image onto metal blanks called planchets. If the die shifts slightly or strikes more than once, it can cause a doubling effect. If a foreign planchet is fed into the machine, it might produce a coin with the wrong metal composition. If a coin is struck off-center, it leaves uneven borders and missing parts of the design. These errors, though unintended, make the coin stand out from millions of perfectly minted examples. In 1981, the U.S. Mint was under pressure to meet high production demands, striking billions of pennies at 3 major facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. With such massive output, the likelihood of small mistakes increased. Quality control teams were efficient but not infallible, and a few rare errors inevitably escaped detection. Those escaped coins, now decades old, have become the ultimate prize for collectors who seek rarity born out of imperfection. The Lincoln penny design itself carries deep symbolism. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln, first introduced in 1909, was designed by Victor David Brenner. His initials VDB can be found beneath the shoulder of Lincoln on the obverse of many coins. Over the years, the design has seen slight modifications, but it remains one of the most recognizable in the world. To think that an image so common could conceal such immense value adds to the mystique surrounding this particular 1981 D penny. My dear history lovers, now we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating and mysterious stories in the entire history of American coinage. Imagine holding in your hand a simple 1-cent Lincoln penny from 1982, a coin so ordinary that most people would never think twice before tossing it into a change jar, sliding it into a vending machine, or handing it over at a checkout counter. Yet what if I told you that among those billions of 1982 Lincoln pennies lies one so unique, so incredibly rare, that its estimated worth is an astonishing $18,000 million? Yes, a single 1-cent Liberty 1982 Lincoln penny, once thought to be just another everyday coin, has become a treasure of unimaginable value, a coin that tells a story of transition, mystery, and minting mistakes that made it one of the most legendary coins in U.S. history. Let's step back for a moment and remember the context of the early 1980s in the United States. Inflation was high, the value of metals was fluctuating wildly, and the U.S. Mint was struggling to keep the cost of producing coins lower than their actual face value. For decades, the Lincoln penny had been made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, a composition that gave the coin its distinct reddish-brown color and its traditional weight of 3.11 grams. But as copper prices soared, it reached a point where the metal inside a single penny was worth more than the penny itself. The government could no longer justify minting coins at a loss. So in 1982, a major decision was made. The U.S. Mint would change the composition of the penny from mostly copper to a cheaper core made of zinc, coated with a thin layer of copper. This new version would weigh just 2.5 grams instead of 3.11 grams, effectively cutting costs, but preserving the familiar look and feel of the coin. This decision marked one of the biggest transitions in U.S. coinage history, and it's exactly this transitional year that gave birth to some of the most valuable and mysterious pennies ever discovered. Now, why does this matter so much? Because during 1982, both copper and zinc pennies were struck, and not just at one mint, but across different locations, with different dies, and under slightly varying conditions. This combination led to several varieties of the 1982 penny. There were large date and small date versions, copper and zinc versions, and coins produced both at the Philadelphia Mint with no mint mark and at the Denver Mint with a D mint mark. Altogether, there are 7 major varieties of the 1982 penny known to exist, but what has captivated collectors for decades are the coins that defy even these classifications. One of the most legendary examples is the 1982 D Lincoln penny struck on a copper planchet, a true minting error that shouldn't exist at all. Because officially, by the time the Denver Mint was producing its later batches of 1982 coins, the switch to zinc had already been completed. So, when a copper 1982 D penny was discovered, it caused an uproar in the numismatic world. It was like finding a fossil from a lost era, a mistake that had somehow survived mass production and quality control. Only a handful of these coins have ever been confirmed, making them some of the rarest Lincoln cents ever minted, and that's just the beginning. The 1982 Liberty Lincoln penny's potential for rare errors doesn't stop at composition alone. There are numerous variations in die design, mint mark placement, and striking quality that make individual examples unique. The transition period created countless opportunities for mistakes, as old dies were used alongside new ones, and leftover planchets from earlier batches were accidentally fed into presses that were supposed to be producing the new zinc coins. Some 1982 pennies show clear signs of double die errors, where the coin design appears to have been stamped twice in slightly different positions, creating a shadow or doubling effect on words like Liberty or In God We Trust. Others have repunched mint marks, tiny D marks that appear twice or are slightly offset, the result of manual adjustments made during die preparation. These errors, though microscopic, carry enormous importance to collectors, because they represent human imperfections in a process that is otherwise mechanical and precise. Imagine, for a moment, finding one of these 1982 copper pennies in your change. At first glance, it looks ordinary, maybe a little worn, maybe still shining red after years of preservation. But if you were to weigh it, and find that it comes in at 3.11 grams instead of 2.5, your heart would start racing. You'd be holding something that's not supposed to exist, a coin that slipped through history undetected, now worth millions upon millions. And if that same coin happened to have additional features, a doubled die, an off-center strike, or a misaligned mint mark, its rarity and value would skyrocket to astronomical levels. The story of the 1982 penny has become something of a legend among coin enthusiasts. Collectors have spent decades searching through jars of old coins, weighing every 1982 penny they find, hoping to uncover that one elusive treasure. What makes it even more thrilling is that these coins could still be out there, hidden in circulation, sitting unnoticed in drawers, or tucked away in old collections inherited from past generations. Let's dig a bit deeper into what made the 1982 copper penny such a mysterious creation. The U.S. Mint's official records indicate that by the time Denver began producing pennies in the latter part of 1982, the composition had fully shifted to zinc. That means that any Denver minted copper pennies from that time shouldn't exist at all. Yet, due to overlapping production and human error, some leftover copper planchets from earlier in the year may have been mixed into the bins feeding the presses. These few stray blanks resulted in a handful of copper 1982 pennies that made it into circulation, each one a priceless anomaly. Coin experts believe there may be fewer than 24 genuine examples of this coin in existence. To put that in perspective, that makes it rarer than many ancient gold coins, rarer than the 1943 copper penny, and even rarer than many historically significant pieces held in national collections. It's this extreme rarity, combined with its fascinating backstory, that has driven the value to such unbelievable levels in this case, an estimated $18,000 million. Now, beyond composition and mint marks, another factor that can make 1982 Lincoln pennies valuable is the striking quality and overall condition. Coins that were preserved carefully, never circulated, and remain in pristine mint state condition are worth far more than those that show signs of wear and tear. A perfect 1982 copper penny, graded by professional services such as PCGS or NGC, could easily break records at auction. Even among zinc pennies, those with extraordinary features or high-grade preservation can command significant prices. But what about the possibilities beyond what's already known? There are constant rumors and theories among collectors that other undiscovered varieties of the 1982 penny might still exist, perhaps a small date copper coin from Denver, or a zinc penny with an unintentional double strike. Every time a new batch of coins is examined or a collection is sold, there's a chance that something new could come to light. And when that happens, the coin collecting community erupts with excitement, knowing that even after 4 decades, the mystery of the 1982 penny is still unfolding. The story also touches on something deeply human: the thrill of the hunt. Collectors are driven not just by profit, but by passion, curiosity, and the joy of discovery. Searching through coins connects people to history, craftsmanship, and the small details that most overlook. The 1982 Liberty Lincoln penny is a perfect example of how something as common as a cent can become an artifact of immense cultural and historical importance. Imagine the scene at the U.S. Mint in 1982: machines roaring, workers inspecting coins by the thousands, and supervisors racing to meet production deadlines. Somewhere in that busy, high-pressure environment, a few mistakes happened. Maybe a batch of copper blanks wasn't fully replaced with the new zinc ones. Maybe a die was reused when it shouldn't have been. My lovely and very respectable coin collectors, again welcome and thank you so much for joining today's fascinating journey into the incredible world of rare coins and hidden treasures that might be sitting right inside your own home. Imagine for a moment that you're holding a simple 1-cent coin, something most people overlook or even toss aside without a second thought. But what if I told you that a particular 1983 Liberty Lincoln cent, yes, just a regular-looking penny, could be worth a mind-blowing $15,000 million? That's right, a coin that costs just 1 cent to spend could secretly be worth a fortune beyond belief. In today's story, we're going deep into the mystery, the history, and the unbelievable errors and minting miracles that turned an ordinary 1983 Lincoln penny into one of the most valuable coins ever known in the world of numismatics. The story begins at a time when America was going through an important transformation in its coinage system. The early 1980s marked a major turning point for the U.S. Mint, a shift from copper to zinc in the production of pennies. For nearly a century, Lincoln cents had been made primarily of copper, a metal that gave them their rich reddish-brown color and distinct weight. But by the late 1970s and early 1980s, copper prices were rising rapidly, and the cost of producing a penny began to exceed the value of the coin itself. The U.S. Mint had to make a tough economic decision to change the composition of the penny. In 1982, the Mint officially switched from making pennies out of 95% copper and 5% zinc to using a core of 97.5% zinc coated with a thin layer of copper. This change reduced the coin's weight from 3.11 grams to 2.5 grams. Although it seemed like a small and technical modification, this change would lead to one of the greatest coin mysteries in American history just a year later in 1983. That was the year the Mint began full-scale production of zinc pennies, but somehow, against all odds, a few coins from that year ended up being struck on leftover copper planchets. Now, let's pause here to imagine how something like that could even happen. Inside the U.S. Mint, the process of making coins is incredibly organized. There are massive bins of blank metal discs called planchets that get fed into the stamping machines to be transformed into coins. When 1982 ended, all the copper planchets should have been completely used up. But in reality, a few of them might have been left behind in the machinery or mixed accidentally with the new zinc blanks. As 1983 began and the presses started stamping the New Year's pennies, those old copper blanks were struck with 1983 dies, creating coins that technically should not exist. These rare, accidental survivors became one of the greatest treasures in modern coin collecting history. The fascinating thing about the 1983 Lincoln cent is that to the naked eye, it looks just like every other penny you've ever seen. It carries the classic design we all recognize, the bust of Abraham Lincoln facing right on the front, with the words "I in God we trust" arching above his head, Liberty to the left, and the date 1983 to the right. Beneath the date, you might find a tiny mint mark, either a D for Denver or no mark at all for Philadelphia. On the reverse side, the coin proudly displays the Lincoln Memorial, with the words United States of America and E Pluribus Unum inscribed above it, and the denomination 1 cent below. It's a design that feels familiar and ordinary. But if you happen to weigh that coin and it tips the scale at 3.11 grams instead of the expected 2.5 grams, then you might just be holding a 1983 copper penny, one of the most valuable coins ever discovered. Over the years, a few examples of these rare copper 1983 pennies have surfaced, sending shockwaves through the numismatic community. One particularly famous example was authenticated and graded by a leading professional service, proving beyond doubt that it was indeed struck on a copper planchet when it should have been zinc. This was not a replica, not a counterfeit, but a genuine mint error, a living piece of history. That one coin alone sold for tens of thousands of dollars. But others with special characteristics, like certain doubling effects, off-center strikes, or repunched mint marks, have been valued even higher. The theoretical perfect specimen, flawless and with a dramatic error combination, is what coin experts estimate could be worth upwards of $15,000 million, a staggering number that reflects not just its rarity, but its historical and collector appeal. To truly appreciate why a small era coin could be worth so much, we need to understand the concept of rarity in coin collecting. Coins are mass-produced objects. Millions, even billions of them, are made each year. But when something goes wrong in the minting process, those mistakes stand out. A coin that deviates from perfection, that somehow escapes the mint with a flaw or difference, becomes a one-of-a-kind piece. The fewer of those exist, the more valuable they become. That's the magic of era coins, and the 1983 Liberty Penny is a perfect example. Let's talk about some of the known errors and varieties that make the 1983 Lincoln cent so intriguing. First, there's the famous 1983 double die reverse. In this variety, the words 1 cent and United States of America on the back appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process. That doubling might be subtle, but under magnification, it's clear and distinct, and collectors pay thousands of dollars for coins like that even without a composition error. Then there's the case of the wrong planchet strikes. A few 1983 cents were struck not only on copper planchets, but also on blanks intended for other denominations. There are even reports of some being struck on dime planchets, resulting in thinner, smaller pennies missing parts of the design. Such cross-denomination errors are extremely rare and instantly multiply a coin's value. Another fascinating feature involves repunched mint marks, tiny details where the D mint mark from the Denver Mint was struck more than once, leaving faint shadows or overlapping impressions. These details might be invisible at first glance but become strikingly clear under magnification. Each of these variations tells a unique story of how something went slightly off during production, and those stories are what collectors crave. Some coins from that year also show off center strikes, where part of the design is missing because the planchet wasn't properly centered during striking. Others display broad strikes, die cracks, or missing elements caused by foreign particles or die fatigue. Each error adds another layer of uniqueness and drives up the potential value. When a 1983 copper penny also happens to include one or more of these minting errors, its worth skyrockets beyond imagination, leading to those multi-million-dollar valuations. The legend of the 1983 penny continues to grow because of its historical timing. It came right after the biggest compositional change in modern U.S. coinage. That makes it a transitional era coin caught between two eras, representing a fleeting moment in minting history. Transitional errors are among the most desirable in numismatics because they capture the precise moment when old materials overlap with new processes. For example, the 1943 copper penny from when pennies were supposed to be made of steel during wartime, and the 1977 silver-looking dimes made from transitional blanks are other examples of coins that reach astronomical values for the same reason. But beyond the technical side, there's also something deeply human about this story. It's about curiosity, patience, and discovery. The idea that someone can take a magnifying glass, a simple scale, and a bit of knowledge, and uncover a piece of history worth millions, that's what keeps the world of coin collecting alive. Every time you check your change, every time you go through an old collection, you're part of that adventure. You never know what might be hiding in the most ordinary place. It's also fascinating to think about how these coins travel. Many rare 1983 copper pennies might have circulated for years without anyone noticing. They could have been used in vending machines, handed out as change, or dropped into a piggy bank. Some might still be lying in drawers, coin jars, or forgotten collections. That's what makes the hunt so exciting. They're out there, waiting to be found. The 1983 penny's astronomical value isn't just about its rarity, though. It's also about what it represents. It tells a story of America's economy, of how small changes in materials can reflect big shifts in history. My dear and very important fellow, now we are diving deep into the unbelievable tale of the 1984 Liberty Lincoln cent, a coin that most people think of as just an ordinary penny, worth 1 cent, something you might find in your pocket, a drawer, or even on the ground. But what if I told you that this tiny piece of copper-colored metal, if it bears the right characteristics, could be worth an astonishing $14,000 million? Yes, you heard that right, 1 cent, transformed into a treasure worth more than the wealth of entire kingdoms, simply because of a few rare errors, minting mistakes, and unique circumstances that make it one of the most desirable coins ever known to collectors across the world. The 1984 Lincoln penny holds a story that combines mystery, history, human error, and extraordinary luck. It's one of those coins that teaches us how the smallest imperfection can create unimaginable value. But before we explore what makes the 1984 penny so special, let's take a step back to understand the background of the Lincoln cent, one of the most iconic coins in American history. The Lincoln penny was first introduced in 1909, in honor of the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first U.S. coin to feature the portrait of an actual historical person, and the design by Victor David Brenner quickly became a symbol of American identity. Over time, it has gone through a few design changes, but the heart of it, Lincoln's proud and thoughtful profile on the obverse, has remained constant. The reverse side, featuring the Lincoln Memorial starting from 1959, represents unity, strength, and freedom. Now, by the time 1984 rolled around, the United States Mint had already transitioned from producing pennies made mostly of copper to pennies made from zinc coated with a thin layer of copper. This change began in 1982 because the cost of copper had risen so much that it was no longer practical to make coins out of it. However, during these transition years and the period following it, a number of strange things happened at the mint, things that would lead to the creation of some of the most valuable era coins ever seen, including the 1984 Lincoln cent. The 1984 penny was minted at multiple locations, including Philadelphia no mint mark and Denver marked with a small d under the date. Each mint struck billions of coins that year, making it one of the most common years for pennies in circulation. But among those billions of coins, a tiny handful came out unlike any others, bearing mysterious errors that transformed them into priceless collectibles. One of the most famous errors associated with the 1984 Lincoln penny is known as the double-ear Lincoln. This variety became legendary because, under magnification, you can actually see what appears to be a second ear below Lincoln's normal ear on the obverse side of the coin. It looks as if the die that struck the coin had shifted slightly during production, creating a doubled image. This doubling effect wasn't caused by normal wear or damage, it occurred during the die creation process, which means that every coin struck from that die carried the same doubling feature. That makes it an official die variety, not just an accident. Collectors across the world have sought out these double-ear pennies, and those in pristine, uncirculated condition have sold for thousands of dollars. But the truly rare examples, those that combine the doubling with other unique minting mistakes, like off-center strikes, repunched mint marks, or transitional planchet errors, can be worth an unfathomable amount. When such combinations occur, they create coins that are virtually one of a kind. And that's where the incredible figure of $14,000 million comes in, a reflection of how unique, rare, and historically significant these pieces are considered to be in the world of numismatics. Let's dig deeper into what could make a 1984 penny so valuable. Imagine that during production at the Denver Mint, a die was slightly misaligned, creating that famous doubled-ear effect. Now imagine that the same coin was struck on a leftover copper planchet from 1982 instead of the new zinc planchet that was supposed to be used. That would mean the coin's composition itself was incorrect, a transitional error. Transitional errors like that are some of the rarest and most valuable in the entire field of coin collecting because they represent moments of change in U.S. mint history. Combine that with the double die feature, and you have something truly extraordinary, a once-in-a-lifetime piece that collectors would pay any price to own, Another possible reason a 1984 penny could reach astronomical value is due to mint mark errors. The Denver Mint identified by the D mint mark and the Philadelphia Mint with no mint mark each had their own unique processes. Occasionally, the small D mark was punched into the die by hand, leading to repunched mint marks or overlapping impressions. Some of these mint marks show doubling, tilting, or even partial impressions. These tiny details might seem insignificant, but to collectors, they represent uniqueness and rarity, the lifeblood of numismatic value. Now consider another type of minting mistake: off-center strikes. This happens when the coin blank, or planchet, isn't properly centered in the machine when it's struck. The result is a coin where part of the design is missing or shifted off to one side. Some of these off-center 1984 pennies reveal a beautifully crisp portrait of Lincoln that fades into blank metal on one edge, a kind of unintentional piece of art. Such coins are extremely collectible, and depending on how much of the design is missing, they can fetch thousands or even millions of dollars. There are also broad strike errors, where the coin is struck without the retaining collar that normally shapes the rim, causing the coin to spread out wider than normal. And then there are die cracks, cuds, and clashes, all of which occur when the die or equipment becomes worn or damaged. For example, a die crack might appear as a thin raised line running across Lincoln's face or the Lincoln Memorial, while a cud looks like a blob of extra metal caused by a broken piece of the die. These may look like imperfections, but they are exactly what make these coins so desirable. When you combine any of these errors, say, a double ear, an off-center strike, and a copper planchet, the result is a coin so rare that it defies normal market valuation. That's when you see collectors and investors willing to pay millions, even billions, for ownership of something so unique. The 1984 penny also captures a fascinating moment in U.S. history. The early 1980s were a time of economic recovery, technological progress, and shifts in industry. The mint itself was modernizing, switching from traditional manual processes to more automated systems. These transitions sometimes created unexpected results such as mechanical doubling, misaligned dies, and mixed metal compositions. The 1984 penny is like a snapshot of that era, holding within it the traces of both old and new methods of minting. For coin enthusiasts, the 1984 Lincoln cent has become a symbol of discovery. It reminds people that treasures can appear in the most ordinary places. You don't need to dig in a mine or inherit an ancient collection to find something valuable sometimes. It's right in your spare change. There have been stories of people finding double-ear pennies in pocket change, realizing later that they were worth thousands. It's the kind of story that inspires collectors to keep looking, to keep hoping, to keep believing that maybe their next find will be the one that changes everything. But what makes the legend of the 1984 penny even more fascinating is the mystery surrounding how many of these coins might exist. Some experts believe only a handful were ever produced with the true doubled ear feature and perfect minting condition. Others suspect there could be a few more hidden out there, unrecognized in jars, drawers, and coin rolls. The thrill of that possibility keeps collectors searching relentlessly. Each time someone finds a 1984 penny, there's a spark of excitement. Could this be one of the ultra-rare ones? Let's talk about what happens when one of these rare coins is found. Usually, the finder will weigh the coin first. If it weighs around 3.11 grams, that's a clue it might be a leftover copper planchet instead of the standard 2.5 gram zinc. Next, the coin is examined under magnification for doubling around Lincoln's ear or other details. Then it's checked for any mint mark abnormalities, die cracks, or other signs of minting errors. If any of these are confirmed, the coin is sent to a professional grading company like PCGS Professional Coin Grading Service or NGC Numismatic Guarantee Corporation.